Welcome to Mural Backstage Pass. My name is Mark Tippin. I'm the head of services at Mural. My co-host is Haley Temple, who's a services lead at Mural. And together for the next 60 minutes, we're going to take you behind the scenes of a teamwork session. We encourage you to use the chat. Find the chat and go ahead and say hello and share links and build community with each other there. But then if you have questions, please use the QA panel and we'll keep track of those and try and answer them as we go. Our goal is to help you gain confidence in using Mural in a variety of use cases. With Mural Backstage Pass, we're just broadcasting the work as it happens. There's very little scripting, if any, minor bits of preparation sometimes, but we hope this inspires you to use your facilitation superpowers in new ways with your team. To help get the most from today's session, Haley and I will call attention to methods, Mural features, and best remote collaboration practices as they happen. But we're very excited today because once again, we have some former Mural Backstage Pass attendees that are joining us in a truly global sense from all around the world. So I'll pass it over to Haley, who'll tell us a little bit about what we're doing today and kick off our introduction exercise.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us. So we were just having a lovely conversation with our guests today who are joining us, as Mark mentioned, from around the world to talk about a really special challenge that many of you have probably experienced if you're hosting meetings in Mural or even inviting people to share feedback or thoughts on a project you're working on where Mural is part of your workflow. So today, guys, I definitely need your help, and I think a lot of us who are in our community would love your help talking and exploring more about this. So we, let's say, have a meeting where we need to invite new collaborators to use Mural. And they've never used it before, maybe they've never heard of it before, but we are asking them to use it now, right? So ultimately, we have, and for some sort of reason, we're trying to get them to accomplish a meeting goal or to provide some insight or contribute an idea. And what we're going to ask you guys to do today is think about experiences where either you were introduced to Mural in some way or where you introduced someone else to Mural in some way. And maybe it didn't go as well as you hoped. Or there was some sort of challenge along the way, because that's where we're going to really help unpack and share some of those insights with our community. So at the end of this session, ultimately, we want to have, I don't know what I was meant to put here, but we want to have kind of a journey or some sort of map or story that we can give to others to say, okay, well, I'm introducing someone to Mural. How do I do it? And what's the most effective to do that? So any questions, team, on what that's going to look like?
Let me see. Thumbs up for anyone that's ever had a challenge introducing someone to a new bit of technology. Has that ever happened? Yeah, all the time.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys being open to share some of your perspectives with us. So most of you guys here in the audience are used to us inviting you into Mural. Today, I want to keep it a little bit calmer because sometimes it's a little crazy bringing everyone in at once, but we are going to ask you to share your experiences and answer questions in the chat. So yeah, to make sure you're still with us to share your perspectives, and Mark and I can add them to the Mural. And then for Rick, Nancy, and Miriam on the call, I am sharing the link with you right now in Zoom to join our Mural right now. I see Shane's crying. But don't worry, you can have lots of wisdom to share with our crew today. All right, so I see Miriam in here. Awesome. So I'm looking, for those of you, it's how do I know who's here? It's I see their avatars when they join the Mural. So now I see Nancy's in here. Mark and I, you can see we have this little star. Oh, yep, Rick, go ahead. All good?
Did you send it to?
Oh, it's in the, if you look in the chat window. and we can send.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
There we go. Yeah, and just a reminder, we we'll be going through a sequence of kind of questions and prompts. And for those of you that are watching the audience, we would love to capture and have you share your stories and successes and pain points along the way in the chat window, which I see. Oh, wonderful! Some people are already dropping their stories in there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
If you guys are in the audience, if you can, while we're getting set up here, tell us what was your first experience with Mural and what was your impression? Was it overwhelming? Was it exciting? Was it daunting? Just type that in the chat. And if you've joined a little bit late, we are going to keep the participation from the audience on the Mural limited, but keep it engaging in the chat. So now I see everyone in here. Wonderful. And let me use the outline to share kind of our start for today. So we're going to take a seat together, a digital seat at our table here to check in and get started. So for example, what I'm going to ask you guys to do is pick a sticky note, type your name in it, and then actually change it to a color if you want that you're going to use to throughout the rest of this session. I like always adding a little bit of flair, like something of purple. Miriam, you have a nice purple too. You can use purple if you want. And we're gonna go put our sticky note to take our seat at the table. And as we do, we're gonna check in. So I'm gonna say, you know, I'm Haley, I'm checking in from Southern California, and I'm excited for this session, a little tired, but energized by being with you guys today. And I'm checking in. I see Rick, you're next. You have the next seat at the table. So tell us, why don't you check in with us today?
Yeah, I'm looking to explore how to use Mural more for my own facilitation with some friends and colleagues.
Wonderful. And where are you checking in from?
I'm checking in from Ireland, so shout out to anyone who's participating from Ireland. Let me know if you are.
Awesome. All right. Mark, you're checking in. Where are you checking in from?
I'm checking in from just south of Portland, Oregon. And, you know, I've been thinking about today's prompt and thinking way back to the first experience I had with Mural, which was quite a while ago, 2014, 2015, when I was at Autodesk. And I just remember the excitement of having a virtual desk-like space where I could be as spatially organized as I am on my desktop, which is quite messy. You won't see it, but I just remember the excitement I had around the potential of being able to throw lots of things in and move it around and sort. I'm a big like card sorting, organized pile, organization through pile person. So that was really exciting for me to have no borders around being able to organize information visually.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. All right. Nancy, where are you checking in from today? And how are you?
I'm checking in from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm doing well. Actually, this morning, when I was walking my dog, I saw, honest to God, a pair of roadrunners that were hunting for breakfast, apparently, and they were also sharing twigs. They must be like nesting. One of them had a twig and handed it to the other one, and the other one ran off to put it in the nest. So that was kind of fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Was there another? I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Really cool. All right. And thank you. And Miriam. Oh, and you're on mute, by the way. There you go.
Yay. I'm checking in from Amsterdam, Netherlands in Europe. And yeah, I'm excited to join today as a participant and to share some of the stories of everything that can go wrong when introducing participants for the first time to the Mural.
Yes. Oh, yes. And I love Mark's adding in a little travel destination. And Miriam, before we joined, you said this idea of naming your different parts of your house, different exotic places. So what should we name our table? What's our destination at our table here?
We don't want to name it Bali, right?
No, that's right.
Exactly. Yeah. Earlier too, I said when I was doing something multitasking, and Mark mentioned something really cool. I was like, I'm sorry, I was in Bali. I was tuned out a little bit. Can you say it again? So yeah, we can't name it Bali. So what should we name it? What's our destination for today?
Paradiso.
Paradiso.
Mhm.
Ooh, I like that. All right, we're in Paradiso together today.
We're in an optimistic mood already. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. Sweet. Well, thanks you guys for checking in. I really appreciate it, and to have a seat at the table with you guys while we talk a little bit more today about this challenge. All right. So here, me use the outline to reveal this. Okay, so what we want, and I'm going to ask you guys to follow me as well. And if you need to, if you are working on the mural and you need to also come back and find me again, what I'm looking at, you can just click on my avatar and that will pull you back to where I'm looking. So if you're like, what is she talking about? That will help probably provide some reference. So, what we want to do today is have you guys take some time to reflect and think about this story of when you have introduced somebody to Mural for the first time. And we wanted to give you guys some prompts to do that. So, for example, the first one, what did you need them to accomplish? So if you introduced them for a meeting, we said our example was we wanted somebody to capture their thoughts on working at the company. And this could have been real time in a meeting, or it could have been when you just sent them the link to the mural and they had to capture it. So that's asynchronous work, right? The next one is what were some of the steps along that journey that you intended for them to take? So what was the process that you took to that you wanted them to take in the meeting? And what was some of the steps that you took to help them accomplish that first goal? The next one is, were there any challenges that interrupted the journey? So I added some examples here. Maybe somebody didn't know how to zoom in and out, so they were making these giant sticky notes, which happens all the time. Or someone had a poor internet connection, or someone just stopped participating because they didn't, they were just like, I don't know how to use this, so I'm not going to. And then towards the end, and this is where we're going to come back to thinking about potential solutions, is how did you in that scenario overcome that challenge during the session? So what we're going to do, so any clarifying questions for the group on any of these four elements?
All clear.
All clear? Thumbs up, ready to go? Awesome.
So we'll all work we'll give you all some space vertically. We'll let you pick where to work. And there's no hard and fast rule here, but generally you want to pick a slice horizontally through the canvas and just tease apart these different things. And we can do maybe a little share out at each one. So
yeah.
I was going to say, while you're thinking, go ahead and pick a color and start in an area and start maybe drop your name in so we have a sense of what row is yours. And I can read through. People are being super generous, telling their stories in chat. So while you're documenting there, I can share some of these.
Or use your color-coded sticky note too.
Yeah, absolutely. From the table.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Even better. So let's see. Keith had people identify superpowers on stickies, and we collaborated on success for today, doing a capture. Anne was hoping to walk a small nonprofit board and group of stakeholders through a strategic visioning process. That's pretty ambitious. And then some people are starting to get into the solutioning, which is great. Chrisanne was voting on high priority items to include in a program increment, right? So we see utilization of Agile, using these things with Agile teams, trying to get people to prioritize. Meng is using it to introduce design thinking processes in an interactive way. So instead of talking about it, maybe being able to involve people, which is wonderful.
So I'm just taking these from the chat, and maybe I'll make it a specific color. And before I do it, team, Rick, Nancy, and Miriam, you guys are clear on what your next steps are, right? So you're starting to add, I see you adding your notes in here and stuff, using your color code. So Nancy, you're gonna use those lovely orange notes you made here to add. And how much time should I put on the clock? Maybe I'll start with like 5 minutes?
Yeah, that's do 3.
Okay, see how we
can
do.
Always give more. That's the facilitator trick, right? You compress time and create a little useful sense of urgency, but then we can always give you a little bit more if you need it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But that's a good best practice to mention as well. Is time boxing. If you're used to facilitating in a room with people all in the same room, you can be very generous with the amount of time you give people to work on a particular challenge. Like we could have set this thing up and said, for the next half hour, we're just going to work through all of these questions. And in a room, you could just see who's struggling a bit and walk over and help them, and keep everyone largely on track just by wandering around. But in sessions like this, it becomes really critical to time box and keep the moments where people are working in these smaller increments, so everyone kind of stays more or less in step as you're working through the bigger agenda.
And when
So I'm
you guys
having a real-time first timer.
Yeah.
issue.
All right. Super present to the challenge. Yeah.
My little Post-it. I'm kind of having trouble getting that.
All right. So let's see. So let me follow you. And Haley, I'm wondering, did we turn off cursors?
I didn't, but you may have. Yeah, I don't see Nancy. Okay. I just followed her.
Okay.
So Nancy, tell me a little bit what you're
experiencing.
Yeah.
I'm clicking and what I want to have happen isn't happening.
Okay.
And I've actually had this problem. It's probably my problem, not Mural's.
No, well, we don't know. So I'm curious, which browser are you using?
I'm on Chrome.
Okay.
And are your Zoom, are you using a mouse to navigate, or are you using like a laptop trackpad?
A mouse.
Okay. So let's check your Zoom settings. Another thing might be an issue. You might be looking at the Zoom shares. So I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
And you might be clicking on that, which happens all of the time. So that is my mistake for not letting you know. So you probably see the Zoom screen, and when I share my screen, it takes over your whole window, and then you want to be in your Chrome browser.
Right.
There we go. And I wouldn't feel bad at all about that, because how many years have I been doing this? And I have started firing up an angry Slack to our engineers going, what's going on? And blah, 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 blah. And then I look and I go, oh, I'm in the Zoom window. So
happens a lot.
Yeah, it's the video quality when it's sharing a screen there is no pixelation. There is no clue you get that this isn't just another window on your desktop. So I think that right away, I love that the context of this session, because we're surfacing this is really what happens. And as a facilitator, having this ladder of troubleshooting, that might be an interesting outcome for us to look at capturing, as kind of like, in that emergency moment where you're trying to get people through this, what's the mental checklist you can go through to troubleshoot the most common things.
And did that help, Nancy? Are you able to add now?
I'm still working on it. Hold on. Okay.
Okay.
Got it. I think, or I should.
I see your cursor.
Yep.
All right. So Nancy, why don't you, I'm going to, do you see my avatar on the bottom? Do you see like my picture on the bottom?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So just click on my picture so that you're following me.
Okay.
And so what I did was I added a sticky note here for you to start typing in, like what in your, have you introduced people to Mural before or like?
I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So use these sticky notes here to start typing in like what to answer the prompts above. So what did you need them to accomplish? And all you got to do now is just kind of double click, and I'll put some sticky notes in each one for you so that you can start filling that in.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. That's always a good, especially for new Mural members or collaborators, is to kind of add some notes in for people. And yeah, we have a couple people here, like Beth saying, is her hand on the Zoom highlighted? Is she in edit mode instead of locking it to move mode? So the community is here to help you out too. Love it. All right, so I added 2 more minutes for the group. And I see we still have, how did you overcome the challenges section is looking a little bare. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna add another 3 minutes so that we can finish thinking about the last 2 columns, the any challenges interrupt the journey, and how did you overcome those challenges. So Rick, Nancy, and Miriam, let's shift gears to those last 2 sections. And by the end of this, we have all 4 columns filled out. Yeah, and for those of you who are in the chat, what are some of the ways that you've overcome challenges personally, or that you've helped other people overcome when they're working in Mural?
We're hearing David just shared the exact issue we just had. Working at trying to get that Zoom to be interactive, and then also just sometimes slow performance, which sometimes it's internet, sometimes it's a CPU, and sometimes it's the cloud service as well.
Mm-hmm. Jay said pre-workshop tutorial. Yeah, if you guys are adding it into the chat, I'm going to add it onto the Mural. So
stickies went wild.
Oh yeah, and the pre-designed template's not large enough. Yes, and you have to like on the fly expand.
Yeah, I think we get into some of the metrics in our ebook. So as a facilitator, when you're trying to plan surface area for how much room should you allow, well, the first thing I do is double click and just add a default sized sticky note, so you understand that's the size that sticky notes will be when new users just double click and add notes. Then you start thinking about the fact that people can add 1 to 2 sticky notes per minute on average. So you can say 1.5, and then you multiply by how many people are going to be actively adding into an area, and then how many minutes do you give them. And when you do that math, you can quickly just simulate just by adding that many notes, and you'll get kind of a worst case scenario or a best case scenario, depending on how you want to look at it, of how much surface area you need. And if it's too big, I mean, one of the challenges you can run into is if you have lots of people, you typically want to give them less time to generate, because if you have lots of people generating lots of content, then you're giving your burden to the next phase where you actually need to do sense making, or you need to sort through them. So while we want to be inclusive and we want lots of input from users, you need to work these levers in unison to make sure that you don't create something that's completely unwieldy to facilitate.
Yeah, and my mind does not work with math on Fridays or much any other day. So I'm just going to put the link to the book into the chat so that people can reference it.
That's right.
There, guys. The great
There you
book. All right. So wonderful. And thank you. I love the communities adding some advice that we can read through and review. But I also wanted to give everybody some time to share out their stories and their experiences. So I'm looking back at our table here. Rick, you are up first. I'm going to go clockwise for now to share your story. So I'm going to give everybody about 2 minutes to share your story sequence with us. So we'll go through each column. So being mindful of looking at the clock too, and making sure that while you're going through the story, you'll see that timer up on the top telling you how much time you have left.
Okay.
Sound good?
Cool.
All right. I'm going to follow you as you go through, and everyone else too. The same thing. I think his avatar is this growthstate.co little icon. So I'm just going to click on it to follow you.
I jumped on it before, so I use it for work, so I forgot to change it to my own personal profile.
Yeah, no worries. All right, here we go. Ready? And go.
So I'll start with the question is, what did we need to accomplish out of the Mural was to do business modeling and mind mapping, brainstorming a startup concept. And we had around 5 participants. So what I did first, moving to the next question is, how did the journey go along? Is my stickers are, by the way, are the pink ones. So I sent an quick email introducing what's the procedures and what's going to happen during the facilitation, during the Mural facilitation, and then I sent another link with the Zoom connection and the Mural connection to help them orient them and get them used to with the how-to guides on how to set them up just in case they haven't done it before. And then once they jump on, if they're two different levels, is one, if they are direct participants like us, like myself right now on this, or people just observers, people just watching. So the participants, we get them a few minutes or 15 minutes beforehand just to make sure that the tech check, we call it, so everything's done well. We go through, we do some warm-ups, and we go through the brainstorming. And once they're done, we send a nice thank you email. And if they have any questions, we correspond mostly through that. The challenges mostly is your classic scenarios, how to jump on Zoom, Zoom is not working, connection dropping. My most famous one, at least in my case, is my own laptop freezing. And I'm the facilitator, so fun and game. So how I resolved it mostly is, how I overcame it is, I just bought myself a gaming laptop. Hopefully that was good.
Yeah, you're on time. Thank you. That's awesome. And I wanted to unpack one of these a little bit more, because I think a lot of what I heard from your story was a lot of this prep and kind of pre-work that it sounds like you set up as much as you can for success before the meeting happens. So I'd love to know. So you're like, hey, this is the link. No, really, this is the link. Join this Mural, and then the tech check. So can you tell me a little bit more about this part right here, this tech check, and what does that experience look like?
Yeah, one example, like they click on the link and the link is not connecting. For example, is they didn't know how to log into, whether it's if it's specific like Zoom, for example, that's the most common one, is they did not they didn't connect to Zoom because they didn't have the app. If you guys are using, whether it's a phone, specifically Zoom, is you need to install another app in most cases. And that is a challenge for many people. So what we did is make sure that they have the app installed into the computer or their phone if they're using the phone.
Okay. So you have to, and I think in this online meeting world, that's another dimension. Usually in in-person meetings, we're going to be there face to face, but people can now join through different tools.
Yeah.
So what about for Mural? Because, there's the Mural app and versus the web browser. So how do you, or anyone, how have you guys navigated that? Rick, if you don't mind kicking us off, how have you navigated that? It was a general question, but then, I realized you're probably all should I talk? Yeah. So Rick, why don't you share this? And then we'll open up.
I love other people's, I love other people's opinions on this because for me, the very little problems we have because it was a direct link to the Mural canvas. So it's what's mostly is that they didn't link it. And one time only I had that people didn't connect it to the link and so on. Sorry, didn't link it to the browser.
Okay. And it's a lot of people are saying too that they a big challenge is just having the right browser, because I know we recommend Google Chrome as the quote unquote ideal browser for Mural experiences. So I might ask, so Miriam, I saw you kind of shaking your head yes, this has happened to me. So how do you navigate that or set people up for success in that way? Making sure or how do you go, if someone's not in the quote unquote right browser, how do you navigate that?
Well, I recommend them to use Chrome from the beginning. And fortunately, until now, it always worked, because when they tried, I usually send them a link beforehand to go in an experimentation space where they find a few instructions on how to experiment, how to do the first steps on the Mural. I like to record short videos just to onboard them and show them around, try to keep it low. And then usually that's when they find out that they might use the wrong browser.
Okay. I might ask you to share those onboarding videos with me, because that is part of our job, right? Is to train people on how to use Mural. So that'd be wonderful. I love that.
Yeah.
The how-to guides are wonderful. The visual, more the show versus tell. I'm just adding those in here.
Yeah. And I also realized that when I did this once, that I shared my screen on Mural to show the participants how I do it. And then they started to try to create Post-it notes on the shared screen. Wondered why it doesn't work. So it created so much confusion that I just stopped sharing my screen while working on the Mural.
I saw that here. You don't share your screen because Nancy, you experienced this. It's a very common challenge. So I appreciate you for weathering the storm with us on that one. And people were asking the audience, how am I doing this little Zoom thing? So I just want to take a quick note to note that. So I'm holding down the X key on my keyboard, and it will zoom on any piece of content or element that I want zoomed. So you guys can try it if you'd like. All right, thank you guys. And I know we're already a little bit into your story sharing, Miriam. So if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the 2 minutes to share a little bit of going back. So an example of what you need to accomplish, your journey, the interruptions, and then the challenge, how you overcame them.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick, or Rick, sorry. I saw Rick Nasser and Nick.
Yeah, just a quick one there. Here's my wife walking in, trying to go onto a Zoom, but she couldn't. She couldn't get the video going. And it was a slider. We have a physical slider on the laptop, and she didn't realize that she could slide it over.
That's a hardware thing.
Right there now.
Yeah, you're like, did you move it? And you're like, it's like, oh.
Yeah, it just happened just now.
Of course. That's awesome. All right. Let's see. And it was an easy fix, thankfully.
Yeah.
All right, Miriam, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. So again, looking at the clock, they'll have a timer on the top by the title. And take it away.
Yay. So I thought I'd share the story of having individuals joining for a mastermind event. So before joining the call, they don't know each other. So and they take turns to be in the so-called hot seat to share their stories and to give each other advice. So I usually start with sending out an email with a link to the experimentation mural, which is basically the first stage in the general mural, but then I would hide the rest of the content, also just to avoid them starting doing exercises and messing up with the structure. And there I have some written instructions that, depending on how complex the session is, that I only explain what they actually really need to know in order to keep it simple and not to overcomplicate it. And then I send them the invite to the Zoom. We always start with a kind of check-in. I like to get them off the seat and get a little bit physical, maybe doing some stretching. Then most of the time, they didn't take the time to really go on the mural to experiment. So we take just a couple of minutes to create a Post-it note, change the color, change the shape, move it around. And then we have a second check-in on the mural where they upload a picture of themselves or they type in their name, they take a seat around the virtual table. And then we have brainstorming exercises, reflection, and so on. And I always remind them that the beauty of virtual workshops is that the Post-it notes don't fall off the walls. And for me, once I realized that, it was just like a game changer, because usually in on-site workshops, once the workshop is over, we take pictures of the sticky notes, but we don't have documentation. And now we can go back, we can work on the content, we can make sense of it, we shuffle it, everyone at their own time. And I think that's magic.
Right. And yeah, you don't have to clean them up. You can iterate.
Exactly. And everyone can just come in whenever they feel like it. So I think that's great. And you can continue to work on the same mural in another session to just build on it.
So I realize that we're a little, so the 2 minutes are up, but I want to give one more minute to dive into the last two. So the challenges and solutions. We touched on some of the solutions already and the challenges, but let's dig into these a little more.
So maybe I can just pick out two challenges that I encountered that I thought were funny, and they happen a lot. One is the confusion about the Zoom settings and the Zoom video conferencing tool that we're using. So when they get lost and they try, I see their faces getting very close to the camera because they cannot read the Post-it notes. Then I explain them the Zoom option to zoom in, and they're like, so where is it in Zoom? I don't know where it is. And I'm like, no, it's not on Zoom, but it's a Zoom option on the mural.
Nomenclature kills you.
Yeah. So what I usually do is I just ask them to follow me, then I go to the space where they want to be, I zoom in, and then I ask them to take over again. So this works quite well. And the other challenge is that participants, I like to do silent brainstorms, and participants get very anxious when they hear silence because they don't know whether it's a technical problem. So if I don't speak, they're like, okay, what happens? So what I do is I just announce it, that we do a silent brainstorm.
Okay. I also sometimes play music while people are brainstorming. So Mark and I did fill your time when you're silently working with chatter, as we're so good at doing that. But yeah, sometimes we do have a Spotify playlist as well.
Which is wonderful. I love your playlist.
So it's fun. Yay. So yeah. All right. Thank you. Let's go to Nancy. Nancy, I'm going to give you again 2 minutes, and I'm going to follow you on the mural. And tell us a little bit about your experience.
Okay. So each time I mention Mural to someone, it's a new it's new to them for some reason, just kind of where New Mexico's at, I think. And clearly, I'm not yet at the expert status, but because I'm the one that knows about it, there's an alleged expertise that goes with that. And so that's kind of the backdrop. And so the example that I'm using is what I'm wanting to accomplish is just to get a team of folks to collaborate, to kind of come together and collaborate. And so the steps were I checked in with each team member, kind of this now dispersed team individually, get an agreement to actually come together and collaborate, Zoom invite, and then Mural, send the link to Mural with an invitation to check it out on their own before we start. And let's see. Next. So issues are ongoing internet connection. This kind of inherent to this team is that it's a group of people that are meant to be partners and collaborators, but they're actually not super collaborative in person. So having working remotely and then using a new tool like Zoom, Zoom and Mural, all of those have been challenging, and just in terms of checking expectations and outcomes. And then my own learning curve with Mural, and like Rick said, I've had my internet freeze in the middle of something that I'm leading, and that's never fun. And then the next, let's see, so persisting, sending articles in advance, trying to familiarize them with the context of Mural, kind of how it's used, how it's talked about, what the possibilities are. And I ran out of time there, but
no worries.
I'm trying to think if there was any other, just, trying to get buy-in individually before the event starts. And one other, this kind of is a challenge, not so much for this particular team, but another team in the US, the federal government now is Xing Zoom from a security point of view. So working with federal entities, one of them now wants to work with Skype. Others are using WebEx. So you kind of get it all down in Zoom, and then the platform changes. So that's a current challenge that I'm.
Yeah.
And as a facilitator too, I find it really challenging when a lot of the things are being dictated by an IT department or someone that don't really use it. And, there's subtle things like the grid view is really important as a facilitator, right? And that's often says, well, you can see videos. Like, well, no, I can see 5 at a time. I can't see everyone at once, and breakout rooms, there are other tools are starting to come along, but some of them you have to set up in advance. And again, as a facilitator, you're planning on 20 people, but 17 show up. Well, you've got to kind of be able to pivot on the fly. And so you get into those chops and you get a level of comfort where you can say, okay, well, at least I don't have to worry about that challenge anymore. And suddenly you've got to go back to school on a whole new set of tools. And you're like, oh, I can't do any of this stuff that I was comfortable doing.
Yeah. Exactly. So, then how do you reconfigure your own expectations and outcomes and still hope to get the buy-in for collaboration and using these collaborative tools and trying not to have the background platform be a limitation, even though it is a limitation.
I recently had to organize a session on WebEx training, and there you don't have cameras in the breakout rooms, which doesn't make any sense. So you're thrown out in a breakout room, and then you have no way to connect to the collaborators, but you're expected to share or connect to each other. So we found a way around that everyone uploads a picture of themselves on the whiteboard. But
Rick, I
Um,
saw your hand raised. Go for it.
yeah, I'm curious. You probably looked into it. I'm sure many people will be asking, would Mural or have Mural ever thought of introducing video conferencing within or as a part of the package of Mural?
I know we've had that question come up a lot because it would make some people just like it would make sense. I think what our product team, I don't want to misrepresent anything, but I think that they realize that we want to be video conferencing tool agnostic so that you can really work on in combination with any tool you want. But I think our integrations team realizes that we need to have that work together a lot more effectively. So they're thinking about how to make that more seamless. So I don't know a specific like product roadmap things like that, but I know that they're thinking about that and with music as well, because that's top of mind of all these different elements that layer into an online meeting experience where you're using Mural.
The sound when the timer is up. Do you have a tip on how to make sure that everyone is aware of the timer?
Yeah, I do. Let me see if I have them here. At the Google Sprint conference, they handed these out to everyone, and I've used them effectively in room, but then they also sound fairly nice. These Tibetan chimes. Have you ever seen these? Right, so you can just.
Oh yeah.
So it's a something like that, or I've seen the hyper chimes, the steel bars suspended on strings that you can hit. So there are these sounds that are not invasive or percussive that kind of let everyone still remain in flow, but have this ambient awareness that, oh, okay, I need to start wrapping stuff up. So that's what I've used.
Cool, thank you.
But I do know is that's in the backlog is being able to set a sound so that it synchronizes and everyone hears it when the timer goes off for sure.
And Mark, I wanted to see you did add some of your own experiences in here too. So do you mind if I give you 2 minutes to go through yours?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Happy to share.
I feel like I'm gonna hear like a battle story, like when I was
no. This was so yeah. This was it was a workshop not too long ago with a creative brand group inside a fairly large company. And I wanted to get them through a couple of activities. It was a small, just like a starter workshop to get them introduced to design thinking, and I wanted to get at least through a warm up and a method called cover story mockup. And so I had a pre-work mural with some of these games. We have some great games we've collected along the way. One of them is I don't know if you're familiar with the children's book Where's Waldo, but I have an image there. And so it's a little frustrating. And even internally, I shared it with one of our sales folks and they tried to use it. And in Slack, they're like, help, I'm getting on the call with the client.
Right.
Can someone help me?
Where is Waldo?
Where the hell is Waldo? So, but right away, the metaphor, it helps, some of these games help people get a sense of I need to zoom in or pan and that kind of thing. And I sent that to my point of contact and let that person kind of get everyone into into that mural, that pre-work mural. 3 days later, we convened. Again, they had to use a different tool, WebEx, and then we used WebEx and Mural together. The warm-up exercise was based on reflecting on kind of some of the pre-work questions, and that went pretty well. I introduced the method, started the timer, and the team started getting into building their cover story mock-up, and that's when the company official shelter-in-place email announcement happened. And so they were in that moment in the middle of the exercise, suddenly aware that they needed to get their last round of grocery shopping done and head home. So that was the major interruption. So sometimes there are things you just can't control, but the pre-work helped some of them, but others didn't do it until the morning of. And one of the things I was reminded of is while I was kind of relying on my point of contact inside the client, to shepherd people along, that we have an integration with Slack, and so I can get a notification when anyone joins any of my murals. And I
Mhm.
needed to pay attention to that a little bit more and just stay on top of, are people getting in there, and do I need to do some light social shaming, like reward the people, great job Tom, great job Susan for getting in there, and embarrass others to get in there and get it done. Some of those tricks, but that would have helped with some of the roughness getting started. um, didn't test all the new functionality, so I thought I knew the way it worked, but as we know, Zoom has been doing updates all the time, and even in the chat, I just saw someone announced May 30. There's another big security update coming, so the tools are fluid, and so you can't assume that what you thought you knew the way it was going to work is still going to work, and you need to test it with your point of contact or co-facilitator, whoever you're working with,
Mhm.
and when that shelter in place email arrives, you just got to keep calm, reschedule, really realize that in the grand scheme of things, your agenda is secondary to them, and going to giving permission or coaching through that. And as we've heard, since this is all digital, it's not a question of trying to preserve the post-its that are stuck on a 3M thing and make sure you can reconstitute this meeting in 2 weeks. It's there. So
Mhm.
go, and then we'll just join again. Instead of, you're in the 2 conference rooms or 3 conference rooms, we'll just all connect from home and keep going, so that
Yeah.
that it became, they weren't necessarily Mural customers at the time. It was a workshop that was using Mural, but the case was proven right then that, oh my gosh, of course, how else would we do this if we didn't have this way to gather our work and co-think? So
Right. No, thanks for sharing it. And we just kind of touches a little bit on the 2 weeks ago, I think we did like facilitator, what happens when something goes wrong in your meeting. And Shane shared something about like people were kidnapped, and not during his meeting, like other people in the organization were, the Red Cross were kidnapped. Anyway,
working with
sorry.
the Red Cross, yes.
But I think it's the same thing. I think hearing the thread through all of the stories I've heard today are like, the same with facilitation. We all have this kind of these quick points that we go to. And Miriam, some of yours I loved, and all of them are really helpful in terms of, not sharing the Zoom screen when you're asking people to be in the mural, or, doing a little, Rick giving more time at the start of the meeting for the tech check, because people probably won't do pre-work. That's a very common thing I see. But I think a lot of these, um, and from the audience too, even saying, taking a 15-minute coffee break, as we've learned, coffee breaks for facilitators is like the, oh crap, I need to reshuffle moment. But taking those moments to make sure that people feel aligned, and so they feel confident to collaborate in that way. So thank you guys for sharing. I realize we're nearing the end of our time together. So a couple of asks for you as our, for Rick, Nancy, and Miriam, and then a couple asks for the audience. So first, the audience. Mark put in the chat, but we really look at these sessions as a way to help you as our community and Mural members become more confident using the tools and working online. So if you could please give us a rating in terms of how helpful or how satisfied are you with this session today? 1 being this was a complete waste of your time, 10 being this is amazing, super helpful and valuable, and then tell us why. And that why could be like, I wish I saw a different topic, I wish there was more or less of something. Extremely helpful for us to know. And I realized, yeah, the chat was really helpful. So I hope I can share the chat with you guys from today's session as part of the recap, because I send the recording and this mural. And then for our for Rick and Miriam and Nancy, I really appreciate you guys joining us here. And I would love to go around our Paradiso table again and share again what I want to answer this question. Sorry, I'm like thinking about this on the fly, but what's one thing that you that surprised you about today's session? So I'll give you a moment to think, because I think Rick's eyes just popped out of his head, and I'm looking at the camera.
Go
And
counterclockwise.
I'm going to go counterclockwise. Yeah.
And Miriam's eyes will pop out.
Yeah, exactly. So Miriam, what's one thing that surprised you or like an aha moment you had today?
I got a few very nice ideas. One was the Where's Waldo exercise, and something that I think Mark shared before we started recording, and I would love to share that also with the broader audience, of having a kind of challenge, a gamified challenge to incentivize participants to log on into the mural beforehand and take pictures of their anonymous animals and post them, so you can have an animal farm gathering or something, to make sure that everyone signed into the mural before the session starts.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Nancy, how about you? Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
Let's see. I would say I don't know if it all goes all the way to a surprise, but I love how Haley is the visual storyteller. And so pulling in the photos and mapping that onto the text is always a really nice touch, I find. Introducing things through a game like the Where's Waldo, since that is kind of I think that's certainly my experience with Mural initially is like, where is it? Just kind of comically, the zooming into Mural versus being on Zoom, just the nomenclature that gets kind of tricky in these days. Oh,
awesome. Thank you. All right. Rick, how about you? I know you have to jump off in a moment. So what's your quick aha?
One thing for sure, like having two screens as a facilitator was very key, because I love the fact that I was able to, like, as a participant, I was focused on my own thing, but then the other screen is just there, and then I looked at Waldo's pictures just popped up there on the other one and I'm like, oh, there's something else happening, and like I better go check it. So I zoomed out and looked for it. So that was it's a good visualization for me as a facilitator to have that, to see if somebody else is doing something which would be interesting to see, and I had to go zoom out a bit for it.
That's really cool. I never thought about that. But it's true. As a facilitator versus a participant, you see a different perspective. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much. I want to be mindful of your time and our audiences and community's time today. So I hope you guys stay healthy, have a really wonderful weekend, and we'll see you here next week, same time, same place, new topic.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
You too. Cheers.
Bye-bye.